Police make an arrest 40 years after a woman is murdered in her Cherry Hills home. Sylvia Quayle's body found in August of 1981. She had been sexually assaulted, stabbed, and shot.
Alan Phillips has been sentenced to life in prison after a Park County jury.
$50,000 reward tonight to help find the killer of a Long Beach police officer. Frankie Lewis was gunned down 40 years ago while trying to save a man. KCAL's Rachel Kim talked to the man who's alive today thanks to that officer.
Found the 71-year-old guilty of murdering 2 women in 1982.
40 years ago, a young woman's body was found near Georgetown. Nobody could have expected at the time that it would take 40 years to identify her.
He finally stood trial last year for the killings of Annette Schnee and Bobby Joe Oberholzer. Their bodies had been discovered in Breckenridge in January 1982. But Phillips wasn't arrested until decades later when DNA evidence linked him to the crime. His blood was found on one of the victim's gloves. That same snowy night in Colorado, officers unknowingly rescued a man whose truck was stuck on the dangerous Guanella Pass high in the Rocky Mountains. Little did they know, they had just saved the very criminal they would spend the next 40 years trying to catch. What crime did he commit? Welcome back to this mysterious journey where we shine a light on lesser-known cases from around the world. Today, we're diving into a cold case that remained unsolved for 4 decades. A case involving a man who was rescued on the very night he took 2 innocent lives. Without further ado, let's get into it. This case takes us to Colorado. Guanella Pass, situated high in the Rocky Mountains, is primarily known for its ski resort and scenic hiking trails. Normally, it's a tranquil spot, but that wasn't the case on January 6, 1982. On that day, a fierce winter storm swept through Colorado, leaving a lasting impression on many across the state. That evening, on January 6, 1982, 29-year-old Barbara Oberholzer, known as Bobby Joe, called her husband, Jeff Oberholzer, after work. She let him know she'd be late because some friends invited her out for drinks. She also mentioned she'd find her way home by hitchhiking, which was a common practice in Breckenridge at the time. However, Jeff and Bobby Joe didn't live in Breckenridge. They resided in Alma, about a 30-minute drive away. Jeff dozed off while waiting for Bobby Joe, but woke up suddenly and checked the time. She should have been home already since she usually didn't stay out late. Worried, Jeff got into his truck and drove to the pub where Bobby Joe had planned to be. Her friends were surprised to see him and told him she had left much earlier. That's when Jeff knew something was wrong. He reported her missing to the police that night, but they didn't file an official report. Back then, officers typically waited 24 hours before declaring an adult missing, a rule that no longer applies today. That same night, a plane en route to California flew over Guanella Pass. On board was Colorado Sheriff Harold E. Bray, who spotted something unusual outside his window: flashing lights. As a lawman, Harold quickly recognized it as an emergency signal. He notified the pilot, who marked the coordinates and contacted the Federal Aviation Administration. Rescuers soon reached the location and discovered a pickup truck stuck in the snow. Inside was 30-year-old Alan Lee Phillips. He had attempted to cross Guanella Pass, but got stranded due to driving without snow chains, causing his vehicle to become trapped. Just when he thought he would freeze to death, Alan saw the passing plane and signaled for help using his headlights. Curious, officers asked why Alan was out so late. He claimed he had been visiting a friend in Bailey and got caught in the storm on his way home. Satisfied with his explanation, they found nothing suspicious. The officers gave Alan a warning about winter travel preparation and then took him safely home. The next day, Jeff got a call from a man saying Bobby Joe's driver's license was found on his land. He drove over and picked it up. Jeff then gathered his friends, and they started searching for Bobby Joe along the highway. Soon, Jeff spotted a blue backpack in the snow. They pulled over for a closer look and saw Bobby's glove with blood splattered on it, along with several bloody tissues. At that moment, authorities were informed, and Jeff was sent home while police and volunteers continued searching. Eventually, Bobby Joe's body was discovered off Highway 9 near Hoosier Pass's summit. After an examination, it was confirmed she had been shot twice in the chest. Her wrists were bound with a plastic cord, and shell casings were found at the scene. During the search, Bobby Joe's items were scattered nearby and far away. Alongside her body, they found keys and an orange sock. The keys were confirmed as hers, but the sock was not. That same day, a 22-year-old woman named Annette Schnee was reported missing after failing to arrive at work. Annette was employed at Breckenridge Holiday Inn and lived in Blue River. The last known sighting of her was at a Breckenridge pharmacy on January 6, 1982. Witnesses said she had planned to hitchhike home to change clothes before her next shift, as she often did. However, after she left, she was never seen again. What happened to Annette, who murdered Bobby Joe? Could their cases be linked? The officers sought answers. Investigators began their inquiry and were upfront about suspects, focusing on Jeff Oberholzer, though no evidence linked him to the crime. They found it odd that Jeff lacked an alibi for the time of Bobby Joe's murder. Jeff was questioned multiple times regarding both Bobby Joe's death and Annette's disappearance. At first, he denied knowing Annette, but later called police, admitting he had given her a ride months before she vanished. He explained that her face became familiar after seeing it frequently in the news. Officers remained unconvinced and requested a polygraph, which Jeff passed. He consistently insisted on his innocence and was frustrated by investigators pressing him. Despite ongoing efforts, no new leads surfaced. 6 months later, on July 6, 1982, Annette's body was found in a rural Park County area, 20 miles from her last known location. She had been shot in the back, sexually assaulted, and possibly redressed or forced to dress, as her clothes were in disarray. An orange sock, resembling one found with Bobby Joe's body, was missing. After analyzing both murders, police suspected a single perpetrator. They believed Annette was picked up at 5 p.m. on January 6, 1982, then taken to a secluded area, assaulted, and killed, likely to prevent her escape. The suspect then returned to Breckenridge, abducted Bobby Joe, and shot her twice in the chest. Unlike Annette, Bobby Joe was not assaulted, leading investigators to suspect she attempted to talk to her killer before being shot. Jeff claimed Bobby Joe would not accept rides from strangers, suggesting her killer was a local. By 2015, over 100 suspects had been investigated. Authorities believed the killer had ties to Park County. Other suspects included a cab driver who assaulted a hitchhiker in 1982 and later bragged in jail about committing 2 murders. 2 additional persons of interest were a woman seen speaking to Annette before she vanished and a man whose photo was found in her wallet. Neither was ever identified. Around 10 suspects underwent thorough investigations, including DNA testing. Investigators even consulted 2 psychics, but no breakthroughs occurred. The case eventually went cold, as no suspect could be definitively linked to the crimes. Years later, Jeff was fully cleared through DNA evidence after long-standing suspicion. Since the murders, multiple agencies have handled the case. It was featured on Unsolved Mysteries in 1993 and Sensing Murders on the Discovery Channel in 2007. However, in 1995, the Colorado Bureau of the Denver Crime Lab conducted DNA tests to check if the bloody glove and tissue linked to Bobby Joe had his DNA. Results showed the blood on them did not belong to him or Bobby Joe or Annette. In 2021, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation sent the case for genetic genealogy. After an extensive database search, a forensic genealogist at United Data Connect identified Alan Lee Phillips as one of 2 possible genetic matches. Investigators learned Alan had lived in Colorado since the early 1970s, residing in Fairplay, Denver, Idaho Springs, and Georgetown before moving to Dumont. In January 2021, officers put him under surveillance. On February 20, they saw Allen visit a Sonic drive-thru in Littleton and the Dumont Post Office. There, he discarded a brown bag, which police recovered and sent to the CBI Denver DNA lab. On February 23, DNA from the bag was tested and matched genetic profiles from Bobby Joe's glove and tissue. The next day, February 24, 2021, Allen was arrested and taken to Park County Jail to await trial. On March 22, 2021, Allen was indicted on several charges, including first-degree murder and second-degree kidnapping, in connection with Annette and Bobby Joe. The trial commenced on August 29, 2022, at Park County District Court. Park County Detective Sergeant Wendy Kipple and Special Deputy Charlie McCormack, both crucial to the prosecution, testified in court. Their testimonies revealed unusual events on the murder night. According to Park County Sheriff Tom McGraw, Allen got stranded on Guanella Pass that night. Authorities found his car's rear end buried in the snow, with its headlights aimed skyward. David Montoya, a fire chief from the Empire Fire Department, was one of the first responders and drove Allen home. He noticed a cut on Allen's forehead and blood on his jacket. McGraw stated that this detail influenced the trial, as it placed Phillips near Highway 285, where critical evidence was found. Allen had prior legal troubles. He was previously arrested in 1973 for burglary and assault. Though that case wasn't admissible in court, it demonstrated his history of violence. In that incident, Allen picked up a female hitchhiker near Breckenridge, drove her to a remote cabin off County Road 1, dragged her out, and struck her head with a rock. McGraw recounted how the woman begged him to stop, crying out, "I have a baby girl." Allen then broke into the cabin, cleaned her wounds, and later left her in fair play. She reported the incident to the authorities, leading to Allen's arrest and confession in 1973. On the night of Allen's 2021 arrest, McGraw observed notable occurrences, which he shared in court. While being transported to Park County Jail in Fairplay, Allen passed 3 key locations: the site where he picked up a victim in Breckenridge, the murder scene at Hoosier Pass, and where Annette's body was left at Sacramento Creek. At each site, Allen complained of nausea, gagging, but never vomiting, appearing affected by the place's significance. On September 15, 2022, after just 5 hours of deliberation, a jury found Allen Phillips guilty on all 8 charges in the deaths of Annette Schnee and Bobby Joe Oberholzer. At the time of the murders, Allen was 31. Despite his past assault on a hitchhiker, he was never a suspect and lived freely. He married, had children, and evaded justice for 39 years. Annette's sister reflected on this, saying, "You had 39 years of freedom, and hopefully now it will all be taken away from you. 39 years was too long." Now 71, Allen faces a life sentence, with formal sentencing scheduled for November 7, 2022. 40 years to catch a killer hiding in plain sight. What other secrets remain buried? Don't miss our next video, Echoes of Crime, the untold story of a brutal gang war. Subscribe now and stay intrigued.